Ladies and gentlemen, this is Wachama Talks, episode 7, with Gijs Dalen Meurs. Was it a good pronunciation?
Gijs Dalen Meurs, yeah.
Meurs.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You are a pioneer in investing and financing, like kind of trying to rethink and help the world to leave these patterns, what we have about financing and how it should be, and investing in stocks, and how companies can have relation with their stakeholders or customers. And now you are the founder of Eyevestor since 2 years or 1.5 years.
Yeah, we've been working on it since 3.5 years. So yeah.
You are involved in many new initiatives. If anyone look your LinkedIn, you are a member of 5 boards and different companies. You started up many new cool things. If you just anyone just look into that, but maybe you have a better introduction, a short one.
I'm sure we can get through the story,
Yeah.
but I think ultimately I would like to contribute to change society a little bit, and to the way that we are invested in each other and recognize better that we can achieve a lot more if we actually cooperate with each other, work with each other, are truly invested in each other, and get that recognized as well. Yeah,
Sounds good.
good.
So actually your story goes back to the banking world.
Correct.
You spent there 15 years in London.
Also, yeah.
And what was your motivation back then?
I got into banking really because I decided that after hotel school and helping Yakult to set up in the UK, that I wanted to become a banker, just like all my friends in London were either bankers, consultants, accountants, lawyers. And so I decided to do an MBA, and I realized more and more that I was just a product of my own social environment, where I grew up in. Mm-hmm. When I was 18, my father offered to buy me a restaurant so I could live out my passion there, and I decided that I didn't want to do that because I wanted to wear a suit, travel the world, make a lot of money, and retire when I'm 30.
Yeah. Wow.
But that never happened.
Yeah, and many other young people who enter the finance industry, they have the similar vision, I guess.
Yeah, I think life is about gaining consciousness, and so if you look at the world today, we become a lot quicker conscious of certain things that we for a long time were educated to believe completely different in. I truly think now that we need to turn everything upside down in order to discover what is the real truth, if there is a real truth. So omdenken is the Dutch word, is really what we need to apply. But it is, my son, he's 11 years old, and 3 days ago, and he's been sticking to it the last few days, he all of a sudden said, I'm vegetarian. And I asked him why, and it was the level of consciousness that he had gained from a little YouTube video from a young girl who was 3 years old, who simply said, I don't want to eat animals. And he's been passionate about it the last 3 days. We'll see where it ends up. But to me, that's gaining consciousness. And that is equally what I'm very much about, is trying to get people to become more conscious of how certain things in our society operate right now, how certain ecosystems have been built by people, and how we can actually change them tomorrow if we all understand them well enough, because we won't accept them if we understand them well enough. Yeah,
and to see these ecosystems, who is benefiting from them, and who are paying the costs.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's interesting that you use the word consciousness. And this consciousness maybe is rising because of the technology, what we sometimes see as an evil something. But, through social media sites like YouTube, every good stuff is coming in.
it's only because of the democratization and the liberalization of what social media brings. Exactly.
Let's get back to your career. Like after 15 years, you left the banking world, and I quote, because there is an interview with you on YouTube, that the financial system is not that I thought it was, and it is not what I think it actually should be. So this realization, because there was a certain realization, maybe it was a process or it was a sudden, I don't know. How was your process of this when you have actually seen that, hey, this is not what I signed up for? Was it a sudden realization, or it was a process of a couple of years?
No, I think like every level of consciousness needs to be a process, and it was the cocoon life that I had been living for 15 years or all my life, really. That had made me realize. And then obviously the crisis of 2008 has woken up many different people from many different realms of society and levels of intelligence. In my case, it was actually the fact that I took a mortgage that made me realize how imprisoned I had become once the equity of that mortgage became negative. I really felt that didn't give me the liberation and freedom anymore that I always thought I had. And then later on I came to learn, I think like it has been for many people, the documentary of Zeitgeist that made a big impact. That opened my eyes to some extent, that I came to realize that I hadn't borrowed money from other people. I had borrowed money from one press of a button. And the idea of that didn't suit me. And even though I had been working in the banking industry for a long time, I don't think the 999 out of the 1,000 people aren't knowledgeable about this, aren't part of this. But I do think that it has a massive impact of how our society has evolved in the last 400 years, because that's sort of when it came about. When that whole financial system took a turnaround, that money wasn't money, but money has since then always become credit, and by now 99, if not 100% of all money is actually credit and is not money in the way that we were educated about it as children and as people. And so that's driven me to very simple. It hasn't, since I became that conscious, I wasn't able to turn around. Is it going well?
Yeah.
Good. So I wasn't able to just say, okay, I'm going back into living that old life and be part of that old system.
Because there are many layers. You also mentioned there's actually not only societal impact, but also environmental impact, and there are many layers and dimensions. How are we influenced through the money system?
So I'm in particular focused on that financial system, because with financial system comes economy, and economy is literally everything that motivates and drives people. And even more than ever in the past before, economy is almost anything right now. And really, I think the financial system that we have is the most fundamental, most high up above anything else that we have. It's the highest thing in the sky. It's the oxygen of our society. But it's actually a man-made ecosystem, unless oxygen is not a man-made ecosystem. Without it, we can't simply live. So we can't change the oxygen ecosystem, but we can change that financial system. We can change that system tomorrow if we want to, and that is what I've realized, that it has such an impact on everything that we do, ecologically, economically, racially, country-wise, anything.
And it's like an infrastructure, but it's we could say that often it's wrong hands. So
wrong hands. I mean, many dictators were born as very good people, and they got their following from having very good people. But power corrupts, I guess. that people end up defending their own system. It also
it's
makes sense to
natural,
everybody. It's just natural behavior, I think. And so I'm not blaming anybody, but I will only start blaming people when they are conscious again about the actions that they take, while they are conscious about the impact that it has. And so that's why I had to stand up for myself and say, I cannot just sit and watch and live my life and then regret at the end of my life that I didn't do something about this.
And also you can often see that even those who seem to be the beneficiaries of these systems, they are also not happy, or they have something wrong with their health, or they are not living a holistic life, a balanced life. So they are also needy of help in some extent.
Yeah, well, that's where I think we are all in a transition period, because we are all becoming more conscious, and and everything in life, including all our industries, is becoming more virtual and more mental and more spiritual to that extent. So it's the evolution path that we're all in. In my case, it was I got liberated by the fact that I stopped in that banking system and that I had to focus on different things, and I had the time to investigate and to educate myself, and from there also start the initiative that I wanted, or connect to the Stichting Ons Geld, which is simply again a means that is pointing out what is wrong with our system and wanting to educate other people to make them at least aware, so we can all decide from the right level of consciousness, the right level of knowledge.
So this Stichting Ons Geld is our money, the foundation of our money.
Yeah, for example, the UK equivalent sister organization is called Positive Money. In Switzerland right now it's called the Foundation Vollgeld, and right now in Switzerland there's something historic going on. The people are actually allowed to make a decision on that financial system. But in total there are some 30 other initiatives in other countries that are related to it. The Dutch one has done incredibly well because of the Citizens Initiative that took place in 2015, which was started by the founder of the foundation, Luc de Waal-Malefeit, and a few people that joined him at the time, and a well-known theater play, Sjors van Houts, who with a theater company, The Verleiders, already had created a play called Door de Bank Genomen, Taken by the Bank, which very clearly explains how that system operates and how it works. So and which impacts it can have. So
you had this realization, maybe it was a process, and it was first a personal step what you had to take, and then you also take this professional step where you sign up for Ons Geld as a board member.
Yeah, as a sort of board member,
so that was the first step in your professional
career. I had been working on Eyevestor already at the time as well, but for example, I had not been in the position of actually programming the platform that we are building out right now, that we're launching. Tomorrow I can shave off my beard, because today we're bringing into production the platform that I had promised to my shareholders, that I would grow my beard until I had solved that point. So it's a breakthrough thing. Yeah.
Nice.
But even that is a level of consciousness. I'd never had a beard in my life, and I actually realize now that having a beard is more work than not having a beard, and what it does. So I now appreciate people with beards much more than I did before.
Nice.
So it's an example of how consciousness actually, how it's important.
And one more question about the banking world.
Yeah.
Because maybe you still have connections and you see, you can observe at least what is happening there. That the question is that, do you think that still many a bit blindfolded people are participating in and having these banking jobs without actually realizing the societal and environmental effects of their work or what they are contributing?
I don't look at it that way,
Yeah.
because I think most of those people have jobs to go to, have
Yeah.
money to earn, have families to feed, have
Yeah.
have a job. And if you look at each of these jobs in themselves, then they don't contribute to
Yeah.
anything bad on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Of course, there are people, just like you have bank robbers and just like you have
Yeah.
thieves and
Yeah.
and other wrong regimes in life. But if you look at these people one by one, then they all perform a portion of the puzzle. Yes, there are people that I think are conscious about the fact and could make a difference in the power that they do, and most of those people I think are making a better contribution. And if you look at the consciousness of today, many people have felt that there was something wrong with our system from their gut feeling, but by now, compared to 3-4 years ago, you could quite easily, people, if you tell people that 99% of all money is not money but it's credit, then they actually understand quite quickly what you're talking about. And so there's a big change. And even the banks, including the Central Bank of England and the Dutch Central Bank, they actually now acknowledge that money is being made out of debt, that money doesn't exist without somebody else taking a debt position for it. So that's already a big change, and I really think it's just a matter of years that we will change that society. And clearly the crypto, the Bitcoin evolution and revolution, and there's is making a massive contribution to that educational system too. Also for many bad reasons, because again, greed is there too, is ruling the world, and the power of most of those coins is not decentralized. It's in the hand of very few people. So there's a lot to say about that too. But the ground initiative, what it was born from, makes really a big difference also in that whole educational process. Yeah.
Actually, I was not blaming. I was just interested about what you were saying, the consciousness level of the people who are working in these financial organizations. But it's changing, it's shifting.
But it's not just in those organizations. I mean, 70-80% of people aren't truly happy in the jobs that they are doing today anyway. So they all want something different, and they want it to be different. And that's also why we're focusing with Eyevestor really on 70-80% of today's businesses are the small medium enterprises. They contribute 70-80% to the GDP of the world, and that's what made me start working on that segment in relation to their equity, because they, in effect, from that traditional system, they can't really do anything with their equity in the normal way, which is why ICOs and cryptos are so incredibly popular, or have gained so much traction, because all of a sudden there was a market for something where no market existed before. And that's exactly what we're trying to deliver with Eyevestor as well, is making it accessible, easy to set up and to create your own conditions under which you want to sell your best product as an entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur is not going to get out of his bed if he doesn't realize, if he knows that day he's not going to add value towards his share capital, towards his shares. But it's very much also to change the cooperative culture, to bring in the cooperative business model, and to change the way that people act and interact with each other. I consider the best form of ambassadorship is to be part of the ownership. And that's what we're facilitating with the ecosystem that I'm trying to build with Eyevestor.
So what I've seen on the website, that the approach is that through Eyevestor, a company or an entrepreneur can turn his stakeholders to shareholders and equity owners. And
he can engage his community, he can get and engage his shareholders, and I really think that we can tackle the most relevant issues that are, for any entrepreneur, increase your company revenue, decrease your cost of finance, increase the method in order to maintain and keep the right personnel in your business, keep your talent, or engage, or build an enduring, long-standing relationship with your customers. I think those are 4 pillars that are important to any of them, and we think that equity, issuing equity and creating a stock exchange for under your own terms and conditions is the solution to all 4 of those pillars, or at least contributes positively towards all of those 4 pillars. Yeah.
And you mentioned another keyword, the community.
Yeah.
So to treat your people, to treat your customers, and also all kind of business relationship as a community. Like you as an entrepreneur go towards a certain goal to provide a product or service.
Yeah, and the people you employ, you want them to work towards the same goal.
Yeah. And if they don't want, if you are failed as an entrepreneur or as a leader, then they just sign off and sign up for another one.
Exactly.
It also gives a much more flexible way of organizing ourselves.
Yeah. Well, that's what we built. Everything that we do on Eyevestor, we build in such a way that we're testing it again 3 pillars. Yeah. The pillar liberty. Is there enough empowerment to both the investor, the shareholder, and is there enough empowerment to the entrepreneur to decide how he wants people to be involved with his organization, with his share capital? The other one is equity. Is it equitable? Is it an equality towards each other in the way that you are being treated towards each other? Is there no dependence? In Dutch, debt is called schuld, guilt, and for the right reasons, because there's always a dependence relationship. And the third one is of course, as a motto with the French, is fraternity. Whereby the focus is what we're building here, what we're doing here, what we're supplying as an infrastructure, as a software, as an ecosystem, is that helping to create the engagement, to create the ambassadorship? Is it contributing to an authentic organization, delivering the right levels of transparency towards all of those different stakeholders?
Yeah. These were the keywords what I also took out from the website.
Good.
Authenticity, transparency.
Correct.
And actually, somehow, in most of the Wachama podcast, we kind of touch upon on nature, like the principles of nature.
Yeah.
That whatever grows, if it can contribute to the rest, it can keep on growing.
Yeah.
But from the moment something is useless in nature, it just dies out.
Yeah.
And this is.
I think there's one exception. That's both the financial system and cancer cells. Yeah. So if you look at a cancer cell, then and that's exactly what has happened to our money supply. Money supply since 1970s has increased dramatically, and I think if you compare the two if you would compare graphs with a cancer cell, then you sort of see the same thing.
I also made these kind of comparisons, but mainly with urban living. Yeah. And the actual footprint on environment and human health and mental health. Yeah. Between urban and rural living, and which is more natural. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And what would you suggest, for example, if someone is using the platform, is it a reasonable thing to share more than 50% of their shares with others, or then you lose control, or still if you keep the biggest part of the shares, then you can still stay in the lead of your company? How does it work?
I am so happy you're asking this, because I wouldn't have thought of it myself right now. But I think the beauty of what we in the end have been able to build, also by demand of customers, is every entrepreneur, in Dutch again it's called eigenvermogen, i.e. private equity. Every entrepreneur is clearly becoming an entrepreneur because he doesn't want to give, he wants to be in control, he wants to understand how he can make sure of his control. So we invested a lot of time together with notaries. We invested a great deal of time in order to create entities and statutes and model also on the platform that the entrepreneur has complete control on how he wants to divide that. So on our platform, also in a legal way, it is possible to own 1% of the stock, but still have control for more than 50% or for 99%. But so the flexibility is 100% there. So you can decide yourself how you want people to vote and how their vote can weigh in and how your vote can weigh in. And that's also why with our platform, we took a stakeholder approach. We entirely focus on that community, on the stakeholder. And we believe there are broadly 4 groups of stakeholders in every organization. And so that's why we created 4 different types where you can manage and control entirely how you want those stakeholders to behave as an individual or as a group towards the control of the company and the organization. And so you don't issue different type of shares because that's what traditionally used to happen. You had preferential shares or common stock, but you just they behave in the account that they belong to the type of member that they are. So that's how we work it on the platform. And like I said, the beauty and the empowerment is entirely to the entrepreneur who originally set out to issue that stock or to sell a portion of his shares. And he doesn't have to put 100% of his company on the platform. He can also put 30% on the platform. And from there, again, decide how the voting and the control is being managed from within that platform. So at member level, you can set all of those things, including a minimum balance or a maximum balance or anything.
And how is the actual value of the companies being monitored? Like, is it the same effective? Like, if you go to the stocks and you have Tesla shares and you see the daily change of the price, or is it not that?
So we again in Eyevestor we think that the stock exchanges of today have basically gone too far. So we literally look back at what happened in 1600. In 1602, the VOC was the first company to issue shares in the way that we know shares today. And in the VOC, it was possible for anybody to join, and even our grandparents, I think, invested in companies like Philips and like Shell because they believed in the value of that company. They were value investors in that company. And with the technology that we have today on these stock exchanges as we know them today, and by the way, there are only 135 companies stock listed, even though there are 50,000 small, medium enterprises in the Netherlands alone that have between 50 and 250 employees. So 99.8% of all companies can currently not do much with their equity. So we looked at, and the one thing that we didn't want to achieve was that people would invest out of pure speculation. Because that is what the stock exchange has become today. And maybe a quick knowledge question also for the audience. How long do you think the average share is being held in ownership on the stock exchange today?
No idea. Very short, I guess.
So if you would simply look at that from the pension funds, who are very large investors, then you can still talk about months, and that used to be years, but nowadays that's more months. If you look at the private wealth management, it has become longer as well because churning is not allowed anymore. You used to churn wealth managers because they would earn on, today sell this stock and tomorrow buy that stock, and they would earn money on that, and that stops. So the churning has become less. But the short answer is that the average ownership in a stock right now is 20 seconds or less.
Wow.
And so that's primarily because of algorithmic trading and algorithmic trading companies, and that's what we wanted to avoid. And I think the ICO world, the crypto world, is showing also what happens what happens in markets. It's very good that there is a market. Crazy things can happen. Wonderful. Let the value of a company grow quickly if there's much more demand than there's offer. But let it be reasonable. And so therefore what happened, so in the ICOs, the vast majority of them, and many are failing as well now, but the vast majority of them have sort of become a pyramid game, simply because it's all about the speculation. When did you get in and when did you get out, and did you do that in the right timing? Then perfect. So it has nothing to do anymore with the underlying real value, the underlying real business. And if you look at a company, so how the approach that we take is that, again, at member type level, you can decide if there is a time lockup. If it's so the default in our lockup is a 1 day. So if you buy 20 shares from me, 20 icons as we call them on Eyevestor, if you buy 20 icons on me, then and you're member type B and the lockup period is 30 days, then those 20 you're not allowed to sell for the next 30 days. And so that way you can also say, okay, management needs a longer lockup than an outside investor. Or no, I want my customers to have a longer lockup because I only want them to invest if they truly believe in my business. And can that have an impact on the value? Yes. But in the end, what we want to achieve is that these companies can have a good, positive market value, because that's where the whole question for me started. It didn't start about changing the world, really. Initially it really started out about where's the liquidity in the equity. Why is there no liquidity? Because if you have no liquidity, there is no market. If there's no demand for your product, then there is no marketplace for it. And so we give companies the place to create their own marketplace. And what you see is we all inherently know that a normal factory bread, we don't want to pay €6 for it, because that's how a price comes. So I'm never too worried about what the real value is, because the real value you can argument in 10 million ways. In the end, it's always 95% of our subconscious who has decides with our feelings where we think the right value is, and that's different for different people, and that's why they have different views of when to invest and when to get out of their investment, and that's why a Bitcoin could become 20,000 and still some people thought it was cheap, and Mr. McAfee eating his penis if it's not reaching 1 million per Bitcoin. So different people, but let a marketplace come together, and then automatically a value comes to existence. And of course, marketing has to do with value. The way you present yourself, the way you put, a Gucci bag isn't much more expensive than an average Italian marketplace bag. If you purely look at the materials and the process to build it. So it is always a combination of different factors that ultimately creates that value.
And I see that the whole product of Eyevestor is an online platform, but in actual use, we are talking a lot here about local economies and local initiatives. Where do you see more potential in the use of it in local economies around towns like Wageningen or maybe Amsterdam, or you would say that it's more about the worldwide and doesn't matter where you are?
We've set it up in such a way that it's so low. How do you say that? Laagdrempelig, low, easy accessible, that any company should register its share capital on the platform. If you have more than two shareholders, you should register it on Eyevestor. That's our belief. But where does it gain traction the quickest is with people that have a community sense about them. So Wageningen would be a very good place to start it, because there clearly is a very clear Wageningen community feeling towards it. But in our experience right now, it's companies who experience the pain that is that relates to having multiple owners or having different financing rounds, or in the end we're a total life solution for equity. It's completely new thinking, it's completely different, but who is it for? I think it's very dangerous to be everything for everybody. That's always the wrong model. And so that's also not, so we are focusing on the early adapters, and the early adapters often think in the community thinking. Just before our meeting, I was with somebody who very clearly said, you know, I bought this company, and from the outset of buying that company, I always wanted my employees to participate in the ownership because it will help me to create the right culture that I want for this company to exist. And that's exactly what he intends to do. And the platform Eyevestor is only a facilitator to achieve those means. So it has to come again from the heart that you want to achieve something, and then we provide a software as a service solution for you to make that happen.
Yeah, because I see like in farming there is a universal problem that the small farmers, you know, they are very dependent on the stock exchange. By the time they are able to sell their crops, and you know, they have nothing to do with their direct community or direct environment, and sometimes they go bankrupt just because 5,000 miles away in New York the stock changed because of some manipulation.
Exactly,
it's changed.
So that's how the whole system works right now.
Maybe you are familiar with the model of CSA, the community supported agriculture.
No, I didn't.
So there are also different methods of CSA, but the basic is that the farmer has a community around himself, and they have direct relationship, they have transparency. So there are many common values what you are actually proposing with
you know, if you have those values, then you can administer, register and grow and issue and whatever is necessary in relation to that life cycle. We have created a platform to facilitate that entire process. But it's only a tool to a means, and in order to create the right culture, the right way to act towards each other. And of course, you know, we in particular built significant cooperative statutes, because the cooperative statute allows for the ownership to be transferred without a notary having to be involved. And with what we built there, I think we truly built something unique, including with the voting that we discussed earlier. I really think we built something that's quite unique, but also so standardized and flexible that any type of organization that has a cooperative mindset and understands that the ownership should be part of all of its members, we are a very good startup solution. So there are a few customers that have joined our platform with that idea, also because we have made it so low tier to low, easily accessible to set up that entity in that way, that all these people need to do is fill out a form that we've created, and that form ultimately goes to the notary, and in a week's time we can send you your draft of the statutes in the way that you want it to be set up.
Wow. So
if we could have more entry into the agricultural community, we would love that. And they've clearly always been a typical standard. They understand how important it is to work together to achieve more. That's how simple it is.
So the next question is more practical. Like, so you are a startup, you have a legal entity, maybe a long-standing entrepreneur, or how do you say it, like a CCP'er, or a stichting, which is a foundation. The question is like, from what legal entity are you eligible to join iVenture?
So you can actually join Eyevestor without having any legal entity. So the first tier that we've built is, again, with the idea any company should have no reason not to register its ownership on our platform, because eventually that company will either die or it will grow, and if it grows then we have the right solution. If it dies, there's no reason to have the solution. So any company can set up its own iVenture, because we ultimately say once it's on Eyevestor, it doesn't really matter whether it's a cooperative or a stichting or a BV or an NV, it doesn't really matter. a limited company, a partnership. So in the first tier that we offer, your iVenture is always private, and it's a register that you maintain up to 20 accounts.
Okay.
And you can do and use all the functionality. It only costs you €5 a month, and you can use all the functionality and create your own iVenture and maintain and register all the agreements that you have. And the reason why we also say we don't care about the entity that's involved in it is because in the real world we all have agreements and appointments with each other that we didn't go put into an entity or into whatever. And the only thing that we're saying is, so you could do this in a cafe, on a spreadsheet. You could do it at the same way. So the fact that you're already digitalizing it and already putting it on the platform and creating an audit of its history is a lot better than what happens in the real world today already anyway. Okay. If you want to grow more than 20 accounts, then you need to go to the next tier, and then the entity is required. And so we are a good example. We started with a BV, but then later on we're now setting up a cooperative, and we are registering all of the memberships of the cooperative. But that's another discussion on how to which entity to choose. But
it makes sense. Like you have. As any kind of initiative, from the moment you have 10 or 20 different relations as stakeholders or customers, then you can decide, because being a startup is like a fluid something, maybe for years.
Yeah.
But from the moment you have 20 different relations, let's say even a customer or even another party, then it's the time to decide, okay, what will be the legal entity, and then you can scale it up easier.
Yeah. So that's how we're trying to bring it to the market, which we're slowly launching right now. Yeah.
Sounds good. I mean, it sounds very natural, very liberal in a way, not in a political sense, but in a just being free to scale up or down, or have access to this kind of platform. And what are the next steps for you with this iVenture? What is the next
we literally have 10 customers that we are implementing right now. That includes our own company, which, like I said, is why I have the beard. And the plan is that it's at least off before this weekend. Because then I will have registered all of the owners on the platform properly with their positions on it. And so we're launching in those 10 first customers. We're happy to speak to anybody else who speaks of the interest. Anybody can create its own user and its own iVenture to start off with. And if they have more questions, they can always reach us and ask. But the whole idea is to nurture those 10, and we're slowly trying to publicize a little bit more what we are about to do. It's been a massive struggle to create a simple message that resonates with everybody easily and quickly. But that's really because it's so full on. It covers so many angles and so many different areas, and it at the same time touches on a very touchy subject, which is the ownership of a company. For every entrepreneur, it's difficult. But the easiest way to look at it is, if you ask any entrepreneur today, do you want to go on the stock exchange tomorrow? And under what conditions do you want that to be? Then every entrepreneur has an answer. For WhatsApp, it was 22 billion that they decided to sell it, even though on paper, quantitatively, they weren't worth that much, except for the 600 million accounts that they had. But so every entrepreneur has a price where he's willing to give up a percentage in order to gain something else out of it. And that's what we're saying is there's so much to gain out of making other people contribute to your stakeholdership, to your shareholdership. It's the best way to market your business.
I just had another question about how is the actual trade working when I buy some stocks or some shares from someone, and I decide that I like another. It's within the Eyevestor platform where I can sell my shares.
Yeah, so we take care of the entire ecosystem. So only users and holders of accounts can buy from each other.
Yeah.
And we're not a stock exchange at all, because it's everybody its own little marketplace. And I call it a marketplace for the simple reason that it's more like eBay or like Marktplaats than that it's like a stock exchange. Yeah. Because everything that we do is seller driven. So it's the person who is willing to sell who puts an order in. So it's not buyer driven. At least not at this stage, and we want to find out how that works. But so if the issuer is selling, if the iVenture itself is selling, they are bringing it to their market. If an existing shareholder is willing to sell something for a certain price, he sets his price, and other people are then allowed to offer on that price. So they are simply able to say, and it's up to the seller again to decide whether he accepts a bid or not. A bit like how a housing market exists. Basically.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and again, it's not to motivate the speculation, but provide people the access or the central place where they can have their liquidity. And so when it comes to the process of the actual selling, it is literally like an ideal transaction. So you buy, you pay. We as Eyevestor hold no money. We just take out our portion for the transaction charge, and that's it. And only the seller pays, because the seller, it's like an FX. He has shares, but he wants cash. Exchange it. That's how it operates.
Nice. And you have other initiatives. Maybe you would like to talk about the good finance, or not? Is it very related to the Eyevestor?
Yeah,
about events.
Yeah, so we are a founding member of Cooperative Good Finance, a very different type of cooperative than the one that I talked about from cooperatives that go on Eyevestor. In this case, it's really about good finance initiatives or initiatives that want to change, that recognize this financial system, that want to change things in the culture and the way that we operate towards each other in different ways. So there's an insurance platform on it, Common Easy. There's Heroes and Friends who facilitate crowdsourcing through their platform. There are different parties on there that are members of that, and it came into existence initially because we thought we were brave enough to say we want to start a new bank and do it all different. But in fact, in order to gain a banking license, there are so many rules and regulations that come with it that you end up having to behave exactly the same as even the best of those banks do, like the Triodoses and the ASNs of this world. So you can't really change that system from within as long as the regulators still dictate that in order to have a banking license you need to create money out of debt, for example. But what we actually realize is that if we bundle the good finance message more together, our collective message more together, and we stand out from a cooperative called Good Finance, then we can probably have more cross-selling traction that we gain. And it's Robert Vasseur and Joyce who started that, and in particular Robert Vasseur lived without money for a number of months, 5 months, and he really experienced abundance in that. When he let it all go, he experienced abundance in that. And then at some stage he had an initiative that he wanted to undertake, and he asked people to borrow him money for how do you say that, unconditionally. So he asked for an unconditional loan of people, and he had built up so much credibility that he that people immediately, without hesitation, offered him that money, and in some cases actually wanted to give that to him. And that's also how I now have it on the banner of Eyevestor, that credit is the new equity. But good finance, it's still in its early days, but the idea is to have good initiatives, connect with each other. We share a same message. We're extremely loose in it. It's really acting upon our feeling whether somebody can become a member or not. There are no hard set criteria. You need to be this or that. We wrote our manifest, and unfortunately I can't remember it right now, but we wrote our manifest in Dutch. If you want. But actually, we ended up bringing the manifest down to literally that one sentence. A financieel systeem dat liefdevol, that is endearing, sweet, simple, just, and is actually serving, and that's the whole thing, right? Many things in our lives were means, and they have become the target. They've become the goal.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like. Back in November, I organized this social entrepreneurship conference, and there were many change maker mindset people. And whenever we came to the moment that okay, we want to do something good, but it should have a business model, and then it should have a revenue other than some donors or some funds, then they were kind of stuck because the money system got so demonized that they cannot conceptualize the thing that is just a tool. And what I see that you are doing with the good finance, that you are actually nurturing and getting together with more grassroots initiatives instead of like comply with the top-down, already rigid and outdated structures which are not serving us anymore.
Correct. All of these initiatives, I think, have their roots in something that they have experienced, and subsequently from the bottom up want to make change happen in a good finance way. But what you're saying, I mean, the social enterprise conference. Yes, it's always a dilemma. I used to earn a lot of money, and I used to live on a lot more money than I am now able to live on, but I feel richer and happier than I did before. So money is still relevant in our society. We can't ignore it until we have a give economy. But for a give economy, you need a take economy as well. You need a receive economy as well. So, and I think that's utopian. We will never achieve that. We will never reach that. That's not what that's where my quest is, to go from a debt society to an equity society. That's where I will have fulfilled my life. If we have achieved it more, that the farmer is invested with the butcher and with the baker, and all their customers are invested into each other as well. That's what would be an ideal world to me. But really, I think in the way it is right now, you need to earn money. So I think the social enterprise concept and the social enterprise thinking is very relevant, and it's too naive, if I may say that, to not earn money on it, because earning money is no different. As long as it's a means to function, it's no different than oxygen. And that's how we need to look at it again. I need money very soon in order to grow the platform, make it more stable, deliver a better infrastructure, a better ecosystem, spread the gospel, bring the evangelical message to a bigger audience, so they all become more conscious. So money in itself is only a form of energy.
It's a symbol also.
It is a symbol
of exchange.
Exactly. It's a method of exchange, and but in the end, it's a form of energy that we people have learned to accept from each other. And in fact, it's just the most efficient way of transmitting energy for as long as no other service or other energy source is related to it that you want to exchange for it.
And it is much better if it's based on trust, transparency and much more positive values than oh, they're gonna rip me off, or that's how the banking system became so evil looking nowadays. That
clearly, but again, that's the culture that's been created. It's the short-term gain that's been put as a pressure on it. I mean, I have the same. I also have my wife at home and my shareholders equally also put pressure on me to make certain things happen and achieve things. And without pressure and without focus, diamonds only come about by pressure, right? So
and we have to learn.
There's nothing wrong with that pressure. It's just about gaining enough access to those to the means and the energy source that you require, and money is an energy source that's required to achieve certain things. I'm very happy that I've been able to pronounce and say this, because I think I'm still convincing myself sometimes of that message too. Because yes, I think in my younger youth I was very materialistic and money focused, or I was envious of people with more than I had. But I've actually come to hate it, and now I'm starting to realize much more that I just need to look at it differently, and that's what I'm just trying to tell.
Yeah, cool. And I think Eyevestor is the best way how you can deliver this message as a mission too.
Yeah, so I hope so.
I think we covered most of the topics.
Yeah,
I guess.
Certainly.
And
except the board game Moneymaker.
The board game Moneymaker.
But that we don't need to talk a lot about it. But we're soon to raise its second edition, and perhaps as a nice example of how we are using Eyevestor also to involve the community of the moneymakers. So Moneymaker was a game that came into existence simply to educate other people the difference between credit and money. And we're using Amsterdam, where this sort of all started. We're using Amsterdam 1600s as a setting for the game. Players are like bankers, are banks, and they play against each other in the real economy, on the board game. And what we did in 2016 is we were so excited about the game that we had designed, because initially we only designed it for younger schools so we could bring it as an educational message. But then we decided to make a board game out of it, and we printed 1,000 of those games, and we sold those 1,000 games in 3 weeks' time, only to realize later that we had built the advanced version, the complex version, and we had to work the last year and a half on making a more accessible, simpler version. And so what we've done is we've created a cooperative again called Moneymaker, and 740 people were the initial buyers of that game. They gave us the trust, the faith. They made it possible for us to sell that first game and to actually get the cost back and allow us to invest all of that back into building a better game. And so we want to make them part of that. Whereas Oculus Rift, the virtual glasses, they did a Kickstarter campaign and then got sold to Facebook for billions. We want to build the next monopoly with Moneymaker, and what we're doing is we're going to give back a portion of the ownership of Moneymaker back to the people, the 740 people, and gonna thank and reward them for the fact that they gave that faith. And if we have then sold a certain number of games, we tell them you can exchange one of your shares, one of your ownerships portions, you can exchange that as a dividend. Once we've achieved the sale of so many games, you can exchange that and you can get a second edition game as well.
So that was the very important fact or part, which is differentiating your thinking method and Eyevestor from a crowdfunding campaign.
As an example,
you are planning for long-term relationships and building long-term relationships.
Exactly. So the solution itself is, like I said, is a total life cycle solution for equity. Whereas crowdfunding is beautiful and great that it came into existence, but it is much more project finance. It's a one moment in time thing, and more and more parties are clearly recognizing that you can create ambassadorship out of crowdfunding. And but I still find it unnatural that the vast majority of crowdfunding is borrowing, is lending. And if you see the total interest rates that relate to that 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%, then still you have 3-4% to the crowdfunding platform. So your cost of capital is huge. And so many companies and startups and borrowing has never been a success feature. But even by the fact that there is social capital involved, by the factor that your friends and family and fools are being invested in that, the actual default rates are much better than when those type of startups would actually go to banks. So crowdfunding does many good things, nothing against it, but I think we have a solution that has more depth and more breadth in it. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. I
Thank
think
you, sir.
our time is over.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is how we can change more or less the financial system with this mindset. So thank you very much, and yeah, see you next time. We can also say that.
Bye.
And
thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you for listening, and the links will be included in the description with Gijs's contacts and website.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.